Alpine has been in the Formula 1 headlines for a long time now, but rarely for the right reasons. A farcical driver situation in which Alpine has lost Fernando Alonso and Oscar Piastri at the same time has left Renault's works team red-faced and scrambling to find a teammate for Esteban Ocon next year. It's a remarkable situation for the fourth best team in F1 to find itself in, and these off-track shenanigans have completely overshadowed a significant breakthrough on track. Whether it's called Alpine or Renault, this has been the works team that F1 forgot in the V6 turbo hybrid era. Team Enstone fell so far below its prime fighting weight because of the financial disaster of the late Lotus years, which left the organisation on its knees. And the process of rebuilding from that has been far longer than anyone probably realistically imagined. That effort has been complicated by management mistakes and various personnel changes at the top, but since it decided to buy Lotus at the end of 2015, Renault has always had a lot of potential. It was this, along with a massive salary, that attracted Daniel Ricciardo, made it an appealing junior program for Oscar Piastri to be part of, and was enough for Fernando Alonso to buy into for his F1 comeback in 2021. And Renault knew it was always going to have to wait to tap into this potential. When the works team was originally revised, then boss Cyril Abiteboul made the bold but not untrue declaration that it would have to beat the top teams with around 80% of the resource. Okay, that was most likely a financial claim, but it would also have been related to infrastructure. What Ferrari could spend and do at Maranello, what Red Bull could spend and do at Milton Keynes, what Mercedes could spend and do at Brackley, Renault couldn't spend and do to the same degree at Enstone. In fact, in addition to being underfunded during the Lotus days, Renault's headquarters was also held back by physical restrictions. It's limited geographically by the farmland around it, and the CFD Centre is affectionately nicknamed Teletubby Land at the team because it had to be partially built into the hillside. So Renault needed to be smarter and more efficient than F1's biggest organisations if it had any hope of success, and to nobody's great surprise, it's so far failed to do that. While it could not have realistically expected to instantly fight for wins, Renault's team has consistently performed below expectations. One of the team's biggest weaknesses in recent seasons has been development. The problems have been obvious since the rapid progress Renault made from 2016 to 2018 to finish 4th in the Constructors' Championship. In the years after that, Renault slipped behind McLaren and was left vulnerable to midfield rivals, as it tended to either start the year on the back foot or fail to make the progress it expected with its car through the season, and sometimes both. The underperformance led Renault to seriously consider the F1 team's future. But with F1 embracing a new cost-controlled era, it made more sense to stick around, with the team rebranded as Alpine for 2021 and facing a budget cap that would peg back its biggest rivals. Almost 2 years on from the news that Renault would become Alpine, its 2022 car, the A522, is the best all-rounder Enstone has produced in years, and is setting the team up for its most successful season since Lotus peaked in 2013. Alpine started the 2022 season competitively. Its car is less peaky at the rear than recent designs, and it has responded excellently to development. Long-serving sporting director Alan Permain can't recall putting anything on the car that hasn't really worked. Aggressive, successful development has been the cornerstone of Alpine's impressive season versus McLaren, which it currently leads by 18 points in the fight for 4th in the championship. It's also the result of a considered design effort at the start of the new technical regulations to create what technical director Matt Harmon calls a good skeleton. This would not have been possible without the growing pains the team suffered as it expanded again under Renault's ownership and the changes put in place over the last 12 months or so. Installing Harmon as technical director was one of the headline acts of Alpine's CEO Laurent Rossi reshuffling the pack during his first year in charge, along with the exits of de facto team boss Marcin Budkowski and longtime advisor Alain Prost. The roots of the A522 will go beyond that, but the emphasis for the last 18 months or so has been on integration of chassis and power unit, which is what Harmon talks about when he says the car has a good skeleton. And he's an expert on such topics, given his 2 decade stint at Mercedes prior to joining Renault in 2018, included the role as head of powertrain integration and transmission design. The key architecture of the A522 chassis and power unit has been designed with aerodynamic performance as the focal point, whether that's the gearbox, rear suspension layout, or power unit installation requirements. Essentially, this means that nothing is in the way for the designers and is helping the team be more expressive, after a period in which it was recognised internally that it had grown too conservative. The quantity and quality of Alpine's 2022 developments is the best evidence that Harmon is not just spouting hot air. For instance, the Red Bull-esque side pods that appeared at Silverstone would not have been possible without the 2022 style of power unit integration. This, coupled with work at the factory to make correlation and validation more robust, has made Alpine a compelling midfield force. Alpine puts this down to a mix of personnel changes and new equipment over the course of several years that has allowed it to refine its development process and avoid a scattergun approach to upgrades. The upshot is that where Alpine has previously been guilty of bigging up aerodynamic upgrades only to find them fall flat, the team is now finding immediate gains. There have been major packages introduced this year, but there have also been lots of developments around that. Each time Alpine has been satisfied with the real world gain and is so confident with its correlation, it's been seeing out its 2022 development work only with CFD, saving vital wind tunnel time for the 2023 car. And as it looks ahead to 2023, it's perhaps the first time in the Renault Works team's recent history that it has momentum going into a new season and the capacity to build on it. The reason Alpine can be confident about 2023 is that in F1, positive development creates a virtuous circle. Alpine has focused its intense 2022 development on bigger gains rather than troubleshooting, which benefits this season. But as Harman suggests, the success of its CFD work means the heavily restricted wind tunnel time can be saved for more complex tasks. This will dovetail with development work transitioning towards the A523 in what Harman calls quite a smooth manner. There is still much progress to be made to fight F1's three big teams, and this is unlikely to occur over a single winter. The lingering deficit means 2023 will likely be too soon to fight for regular podiums and wins. But that remains a medium-term target, and the team will be emboldened by the important steps seen this year. The 100 race plan invoked by Rossi put a fresh label on Renault's attempt to make its F1 team great again. Off-track drama has put a major question mark over how seriously this team should be taken, but on track at least, it looks more convincing than it has in a long time. The only problem is that Alpine's faith that it can be the F1 team that breaks out of the midfield in the coming years has not been shared by the drivers it's wanted to prioritise. Ricciardo banked on McLaren instead, Piastri will bank on McLaren instead, and Fernando Alonso will bank on Aston Martin. Or should that be go to the bank with Aston Martin? As we've explored in detail, in the second year of the Alpine era there have been strong hints of the team finally getting back to its true fighting weight. Those now in charge have been quite publicly embarrassed off track, but they are extolling the virtues of Alpine's potential on it, and they are right to do so. It's why Alpine seems convinced that Alonso is leaving at the end of this season because he's been tempted by money rather than performance potential. And Alpine is baffled that Piastri thinks McLaren is a better choice. So what are Alpine's chances of proving them both wrong? Well, it's certainly realistic to target beating McLaren and Aston Martin in the immediate future. As it stands, Alpine probably has the most up-to-date infrastructure, even if its Enstone facility is located somewhere you would never set up an F1 team in the modern day. It started this era of technical rules in a stronger place, and it has shown it has the capacity to design and produce developments at the rate of a leading team. The interesting question, one that Alpine cannot answer convincingly just now, is whether it has a ceiling as high as its rivals. McLaren and Aston Martin each have ambitious projects, Aston Martin especially so, but Alpine contends that it's hardly holding back itself. It's still scaling up to hit the same size the big teams are scaling down to in the budget cap era, and has eyes on potential simulator and CFD improvements to go with a consistent expansion of the facility within its geographical limitations. There's a huge emphasis on finally unleashing this project's untapped potential, and that has started to happen in 2022. If this trend can continue, the likes of Alonso and Piastri may come to regret their choices, and Alpine may have the last laugh, but for now, that remains a big if.